will count toward the end. But all right, it's time for us to get going. Everyone's on the edge of their seat. We see you, fans. Thank you for being here. We are going to decide who the fourth and final person is in Paris at the end of today. Hikaru Nakamura and Ian Nepomniachtchi. Not a lot of light hitting Ian Nepomniachtchi's face right now. I don't know what to say about that. Can we get the guy a lamp? I don't know.
Well, I think that, hello darkness, his old friend, he is just going to try to use all of his might over the board, and maybe it could help him. Hikaru can't read his facial expressions because nobody can see them at the moment, and we are off. We see that the opening is one that's played, Danny. No knight development. The knight's still on b1 here, so both players just castling as quickly as possible, and there's Ian Nepomniachtchi striking in the center, trying to blow this whole thing up.
He does indeed strike in the center. We saw Hikaru lean in to be like, am I actually playing Ian there? Was this a faceless man? But a little bit of light shine now on the edge of Nepomniachtchi's face. But okay, back to the chessboard. Both guys playing very quickly here. An open center in this Queen's Gambit, whatever you want to call it, declined, become exchanged, open center. Your thoughts on what we got here?
Well, I think I like the name of it. He declined, turned, accepted. That's what it is, and I love this.
I didn't know what else to call it. Yeah,
well, I don't either, but I do know I love this a5 decision because sometimes players they don't think before they move. They're like, that knight belongs on d7. Let's just develop it. No, that pawn was on b4. It was extended quite far. Let's try to create some targets to go after. This a3 pawn now is in black sights. Black has completed development, and actually, Denny, look at this. We see that suddenly the engine prefers black, and I believe the reason, oh my goodness, I wasn't going to say rook there. I thought the queen and rook would line up against a3, but Danny, you have to love the ambitious play from Ian Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, the rook is on h5 right now, and there's no open lines against the white king. You've got that bishop on b7 hitting the knight on f3. Watch out for immediate tactics. I know it's crazy, Robert, but moves like queen to c7 are immediately on the agenda, hitting the bishop on c4 and then overwhelming the queen on e2 potentially because it also hits the h2 pawn.
Well, Danny, bishop takes f3 might be available here. He goes queen b8, but I think we have to analyze that really quickly if we can. You called it. Yeah. It was a missed shot there by Ian Nepomniachtchi. So I'm going to take us back. Bishop takes f3. The point is that h2 is now not defended. And if you go queen takes f3, queen c7. The knight protects the rook, so that's not loose. The queen hits the bishop. It also hits the pawn on h2. And that at least wins a pawn with a huge attack.
It's a basic tactic when I spotted as quickly as I did. I'm surprised Ian played so quickly to rook d1. I mean, it's exactly what the idea was of rook h5, right? I mean, this was a potential huge advantage on the board. By the way, just back up, Hikaru would have been forced to take with the pawn on f3, I think, instead of queen takes, which would have left the king open. So this was probably the best line for Hikaru, but still Ian should have gone for this.
Because if we go to the game continuation, look what Ian has lined up. In this dynamic, the best he wants is to take on f3 at some point. But white has brought that other knight back to d2. So the knight on f3 has gained another defender. I'm not saying that black is in trouble. I think Ian has a perfectly healthy position, despite the fact that the rook is on h6. And that is weird place for him. In some of these positions, if you just take the queens off the board, Danny, black could be in trouble because that rook isn't getting back into the game very easily. But with queens on the board, Ian is counting on some attacking chances and some hopes against that white king.
Well, now I'm wondering if he can count on some chances on the light squares. He didn't play bishop a6, which I thought might have been an interesting move there to hit the d3 square, but okay. He plays knight a4. This is a unique position, Robert. How often do you see a rook on h6 in a spot like this, the queen and bishop battery on that long diagonal? So I agree, still anyone's game, but kind of odd. And sometimes what happens when you have unique piece placements, Robert, even for the best players, is blunders, because that's how weird tactics can occur, right? Your pieces are on squares, pattern recognition is not always there. This is a blunderable position, I feel, with a lot of loose pieces on both sides of the board.
Yeah, this knight on a4 only has the queen as a defender. White could misstep if he gets overly ambitious. And now there's an attempt to get into this c3 square, but to what? What is that such a good idea? I mean, it's getting active. That's the good news. But then I just don't see the targets that black is going after. So a3, that earlier in the game is something I mentioned, but you don't really want to take a pawn, even if you can, when your queen is at the other line of a rook on a1.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, Hikaru decides whether the knight goes to c3 or not. He doesn't want it to be with tempo on the first lady, so she backs up to e1. I like that move. It's kind of a kind of asking black what's next sort of move. You know that white knight on d2, Robert, can come to e4 in a moment's notice. That rook on h6 is looking more misplaced.
Yeah, that rook honestly belongs on the A file now, and it was good trying to set up an attack, but now it does defend this HM pawn, which actually is invulnerable, and otherwise it's just sitting here doing kind of nothing. So I think it's time, Danny, for Hikaru to get active. But we see that he is a bit cramped with his pieces. Maybe knight c4 now makes a lot of sense. The knight on d5 would love to get out of the way of this bishop and queen, but the knight can't move because b6 would drop, and that would be a fork.
I love knight c4. You called it. He played it. It's explosive. There we go. e4 could be next. Not anymore. The knight is hanging. But if that knight on d5 goes, the b6 pawn is hanging. That's my point. And so, yeah, exactly. The white knight is threatening a fork. I like this move, knight fd2 by Hikaru, and I like that he played it quickly, too.
And I think this is a good example of one of Hikaru's main strengths. People think that Hikaru is just this tactical, aggressive player. He was when he was a kid, when he was very young. He really went all out in King's Indians from the black side, throwing his pieces at his opponent. He has some of the nicest wins in chess history, like against Boris Gelfand. But Hikaru has changed his style quite a lot. He likes these slower maneuvering positions where quite often he can outclass his opponents. Outclassing Ian Nepomniachtchi, that may be a different story. But that maneuvering type of style, when he gets to play very quickly and use the clock as a weapon, the 17th piece, as James Canty likes to call it, that typically works in his favor. But Danny, after this move, rook d8, it's Jan who suddenly is in the lead on the clock. Hikaru sitting, thinking, he's wondering if this bishop on d4 could be in a line of fire. Knight f4 at some moment is in the air.
Yeah, knight f4 threatens a checkmate on g2. Just, real quick memo. And I wonder if that's even a possibility now. It would be super loose though as well, because you don't have to take the knight. You can guard checkmate, and then there's other problems. Okay, Jan plays a safe move, bishop f8, guards g7. Computer doesn't like it though. Maybe just because b6 is hanging.
Yeah, I think that pawn can just be captured. White is going up a pawn here, and the rook on h6 is still offside. We do not like that rook. We have not liked that rook. So take a pawn, and then Jan has to prove compensation that he doesn't really have.
It's so weird. He played this idea of rook h5, had the opportunity on the board. The blunder was made by Hikaru, and he didn't go for it. And now we're like unpacking this line I see on the chess.com score sheet 15 moves later. The only opportunity Jan had was when Hikaru blundered rook fd1. Okay, but wait. Now maybe there's some compensation on the light squares here. The a3 pawn's still very weak, even though Hikaru won b6.
Yes, that a3 pawn, that's the extra one, but it's in black's line of fire. The rook comes back to protect it. Don't forget about your bishop here. Oh, he does, because Danny, he was going for the white king. So these trades, even though white's up material, black has more fun because of some of the activity.
Yeah, and black has more time as well. It's not huge, but it is something, and you never want to be down on time against Hikaru, right? So Jan starting off well in terms of the narrative that don't get down on the clock against Nakamura. Operation don't lose on time against Hikaru has commenced.
I think that's a pretty reasonable operation. This bishop on f5 was attacking this pawn on h3. The g2 pawn was pinned a moment ago. That's why the king stepped in the corner. Now, this bishop cannot get trapped very easily, at least not yet. e4 was away, but the bishop on d4 was loose, and g4, that's way too risky. So rook goes back to h6. Danny, the computer, the engine, it doesn't love it. I think it's a perfectly reasonable move, even though Jan made some faces there. Bishop takes h3 is something that Hikaru has to be alert to.
Yeah. Yeah, bishop takes h3 seems super scary. You couldn't play e4 because the bishop was hanging on d4, which made me wonder if there was some bishop b6 e4 idea. But I wouldn't be inviting bishop takes h3 either if I was Hikaru. That just feels super scary. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, these positions are not easy to figure out. I think that for black, you just want to continue getting active here and going after the white king. And queen d5 is a really nice move, centralizing the queen. e5 becomes a threat. And you also stop white from playing e4 so easily because the bishop on d4 is loose over here. So I'm liking black's position. I'm also liking black's clock. Danny, we know how fast Hikaru is. He's a four-time bullet chess champion. But right now, he is down about 15 seconds.
Agreed. And white's pieces feel super loose, right? The knight on d2 can't move because the rook on b3 is there. But if you don't move the knight on d2, then e5 is coming, as you pointed out. That bishop is kind of pinned to the battery that the queen and rook have. So Hikaru figures out positions like this, for a living, but this feels super loose for White.
Does he really only have 20 seconds now? I mean, he was
Yeah.
close to equal on the clock, but now he's in severe time trouble. He blunders as soon as, he sits in for a deep thing, long think, wrong think, and here it seems like Black has the upper hand. And it has to be bishop takes h3.
Oh, and he goes for it. Here we go. Fireworks on the board. Game 1. Welcome to the SCC, boys and girls. This is Ian Nepomniachtchi's. This is the script. Ian has to start out well against Hikaru to have a chance today. And if he gets a win with Black, you can't start better than that.
And that, I think, may be what Hikaru overlooked, that he stopped the first wave of attack. The knight covered h2, but here comes the rook to d5. Now, after f4, you stop rook g5, but you invite the queen in, and here comes the rook. Danny, this looks like an overwhelming attack for Ian.
Very well played right now from Nepomniachtchi. Also very well played in that hotel room. He finally got a light on his face. Good to see you, Ian. No longer playing in the darkness. But yeah, this looks rook h1. You can't take it.
I'm wondering why he can't just take the queen.
Yeah, but I think rook h1's even better. Yeah, because you've got mate on h2.
That's true, right? The knight couldn't take the rook there, and instead the queen drops back. He can bring the queen in with a check, but Danny, at some point, he has to take this queen. Hikaru's in huge time trouble, just a few seconds for him. And h5, I think that is the game sealer. Just push that pawn, and you're going to win more material.
Okay. Ian takes with check, super smart. He's going to mate him on g2 once the king hides from checks, and just like that, no. Okay, I was about to call it. Hikaru not giving up.
Wow.
You got to give Hikaru credit. I thought this. I thought this game was over like 2 minutes ago.
He's on the verge of saving this. Look at the clock; it's about even. If he wins h3, the black queen may at some point get stuck trying to stop the a pawn, and this is not easy to win anymore.
This is wild. The fact that we're still commentating on this game is wild right now. Ian still has a massive advantage, but both sides under 10 seconds, and the two rooks are often too much. They're irritating.
Rook takes e6 is in the air because the pawn was too far. So Hikaru, he was able to gain the e6 pawn for the a pawn. This should still be winning, Danny. And actually, now it does feel easier with the black king coming in.
Did he miss a chance to play rook a6? I don't think so. The eval bar never swung. So it seems like Ian is still on the verge, but
there's apparently, that's nice, f2, and the white king is in trouble. All the pawns coming to the party. Just don't take with the queen on f2, and Hikaru doesn't even test him. Ian Nepomniachtchi, Danny, we said that's what he needed. He gets off to a blazing hot start.
It's